when our HOA president Karen slapped us with ridiculous fines for parking in our own driveway. She had no idea my dad was the banker reviewing their $1 million loan application. Ever wonder what happens when a power-hungry HOA messes with the wrong family? I stared at the bright pink paper tucked under my windshield wiper, my stomach dropping like a stone. $150 fine. Driveway violation. It read in big black letters. What? This was our own driveway. My sister Jenny's graduation party had ended late last night. A few family members had stayed over, parking their cars in our driveway. Nothing seemed wrong when I went to bed. "Dad!" I yelled, rushing back inside our house. "You need to see this." My father, Thomas Reynolds, looked up from his coffee, his forehead wrinkling with concern. As a senior loan officer at First National Bank, he dealt with numbers and rules all day, but even he looked confused by the citation. "This makes no sense," he muttered, reading the fine print. "It says we violated Section 7.3 of the Pinecrest Gardens HOA rules by having more than 2 vehicles in our driveway." Mom joined us, still in her bathrobe. "That's ridiculous. It's our property." Dad reached for his phone. "I'm calling the HOA office right now." I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to anger. He put the phone on speaker so we could all hear. "Pinecrest Gardens HOA. This is Karen Matthews speaking," a clipped voice answered. "Hello. This is Thomas Reynolds from 428 Maple Drive. We received a parking violation this morning for having family cars in our driveway. There must be some mistake." The laugh that came through the speaker made my skin crawl. It wasn't friendly at all. "No mistake, Mr. Reynolds. Section 7.3 clearly states that residents may have no more than 2 vehicles parked in their driveway at any time. You had 5. That's a $150 fine." Dad's voice remained steady, but I could see his knuckles turning white around the phone. "Karen, these were overnight guests for my daughter's graduation. Surely there's some exception for special events. Rules are rules, Mr. Reynolds. If everyone parked wherever they wanted, our neighborhood would look like a used car lot. The fine is due within 10 days, or it doubles." "This seems excessive," Dad pressed. "Can I appeal this at the next board meeting?" "You're welcome to try, but I should warn you, I'm the president of the board, and I personally documented this violation. The evidence is quite clear." As the call ended, I peeked through our front blinds and spotted a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair standing in her driveway across the street, staring directly at our house while talking on her phone. She wore expensive-looking workout clothes and had that look adults get when they think they've won something. "Dad, I think that's her watching us right now," I whispered. He joined me at the window. "Karen Matthews," he said quietly. "She moved in 6 months ago and got elected HOA president last month. I've never spoken to her before today." That afternoon, I helped Dad check our HOA documents. The rule about driveway parking did exist, but it was buried on page 37 of a 50-page document we'd barely glanced at when moving in 3 years ago. "This is crazy," I said. "Why would anyone care how many cars are in our driveway for one night?" Dad rubbed his temples. "Some people like having power over others. Let's pay the fine for now, but I want to learn more about these rules." Just as we finished dinner, our doorbell rang. I opened it to find our neighbor, Mr. Jackson, looking upset. "Sorry to bother you, Reynolds family, but I saw your citation today. Wanted to warn you, Karen's just getting started." He explained how his son's basketball hoop had been ordered removed last week after being up for 5 years without complaint. The Garcia family had been fined for having the wrong color flowers. The elderly Mrs. Wilson had received a warning about her bird feeder being 2 inches taller than regulations allowed. "She's on a power trip," Mr. Jackson sighed, "and none of us know how to stop her." After he left, I noticed Dad was unusually quiet. He sat at his laptop, scrolling through documents with intense focus. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "Property maps," he answered, "and HOA financial records. They're public information for members." The next morning, another pink slip waited on our mailbox. This time, the violation read, "Improper lawn maintenance, grass exceeds 3.5 inches in height. Fine, $75. I ran inside with the paper. Dad, she's targeting us now. He took the citation without looking surprised. I figured she might. I cut the grass 4 days ago. Mom threw up her hands. This is harassment. Should we call a lawyer? Dad had a strange gleam in his eyes. Not yet. I learned something interesting last night. The HOA is planning a big renovation of the community center. They're seeking a $1.2 million loan to fund it. So? I asked. So, Karen and her board need that loan approved within the next month to start construction before winter. He smiled in a way I rarely saw. And guess which bank they applied to? My eyes widened. First National? Your bank. He nodded. And guess who's been assigned to review their application? A slow smile spread across my face as I realized what this meant. You. Sometimes, Dad said softly, the universe has a funny way of balancing things out. As I looked back out the window, I caught Karen walking by our house with a measuring tape and a camera, bending down to check our grass height. She had no idea who she was truly messing with. This is getting out of hand, Mom said, spreading the 5 violation notices across our kitchen table. In just 1 week since the driveway incident, we'd been cited for grass height, a garden gnome not on the approved decoration list, wind chimes that were excessively noisy, a hose not properly stored, and a mailbox that was apparently 1 shade darker than approved black. Total fines, $425. Dad hadn't paid any of them yet. Instead, he'd been making phone calls every evening from his home office, speaking in his professional banker voice. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. These days, unexpected visitors usually meant bad news. I opened the door to find Mrs. Smith from 3 houses down, clutching a pink citation of her own. Her eyes were red from crying. "Is your father home?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do anymore." 5 minutes later, our living room filled with neighbors I'd barely spoken to before. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the Garcias, the Jacksons, elderly Mrs. Wilson with her cane, even the typically private Dr. Patel from the corner house. Each had their own horror story about Karen Matthews and her reign of terror. She fined me for having my medical equipment delivery box on my porch for 4 hours, Dr. Patel explained. I was in surgery and couldn't bring it in immediately. Mrs. Wilson dabbed at her eyes. I've lived here for 32 years. Now she says my bird feeders are unsightly and attract vermin. Those birds are my only company some days. Dad listened to everyone carefully, taking notes. When they finished, he cleared his throat. I've been investigating, he said, turning his laptop to show us all. Last year, before Karen moved here, our HOA collected about $5,000 in fines total. In just 2 months under her leadership, they've already collected over $12,000. Gasps filled the room. But that's not all, Dad continued. The HOA bylaws state that all fine money must be used for community improvements. But according to their financial statements, there's no record of these recent fines in the official accounts. What does that mean? Mrs. Garcia asked. It means, Dad replied slowly, the money might be going somewhere else. And right when they're applying for $1 million loan, that's a very serious problem. The room went silent as everyone processed this information. What can we do? Mr. Jackson finally asked. Dad smiled. Karen doesn't know it yet, but as part of my bank's loan review process, I've requested a complete audit of all HOA finances for the past year. It's standard procedure for loans of this size. My heart swelled with pride. My dad wasn't fighting back with anger or breaking rules himself. He was using his knowledge and position completely properly to make sure everything was above board. Mrs. Smith looked worried. Won't she know it's you behind this? Banking regulations require confidentiality, Dad explained. She'll know the bank is investigating, but not that I'm personally handling it. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from my friend Zach. OMG, did you see what Karen posted on the neighborhood Facebook page? I quickly pulled it up and showed everyone. Karen had posted a long rant about certain families who were bringing down property values with their blatant disregard for community standards. While she didn't name us directly, Everyone knew who she meant. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us, Mom said, looking stressed. Dad remained calm. This actually helps us. She's creating a public record of her actions. That afternoon, while walking our dog Max, I noticed something odd. Karen's best friend Diane had a massive RV parked in her side yard. According to the same rules we'd been studying, recreational vehicles were explicitly prohibited from being stored on properties. I snapped a quick photo and showed Dad when I got home. Interesting, he said. Let's start documenting everything. Over dinner, Dad explained his plan. The HOA board meeting is next Tuesday. I think we should all attend. Won't Karen just shut us down? I asked. She can try, but HOA bylaws require that members be allowed to speak. And we won't be alone. Dad was right. When Tuesday came, the community center meeting room was packed like never before. Karen looked shocked as she called the meeting to order. Her usual 4 empty rows of chairs now filled with attentive faces. When she reached the agenda item about the community center renovation, she tried to speed through it. The loan application is proceeding as expected, she said briskly. Moving on to, excuse me. Dad stood up. As a community member, I'd like more details about this loan. Karen's smile tightened. The details are confidential, Mr. Reynolds. Actually, Dad replied, as this is a loan using our collective property as collateral, members have the right to full disclosure. It's in the bylaws, Article 4, Section 2. The room went completely silent. Karen's face flushed red. Fine, she snapped. We're borrowing $1.2 million from First National Bank for comprehensive upgrades to the facility. The application is under review. And what's the status of that review? Dad asked innocently. Karen's eye twitched. There have been some unexpected requests for additional documentation. Like what? Someone called out. Financial records, she admitted reluctantly. It's just red tape. Nothing concerning. Dad raised his hand again. While we're discussing finances, I'd like to ask about fine collection. According to the quarterly statement, only $3,200 in fines was reported, but many of us have paid significantly more than that combined. Karen's eyes darted to Diane, who was frantically shaking her head. Those recent fines haven't been processed yet, Karen stammered. An elderly man in the back stood up. I paid my fine 8 weeks ago. You cashed my check the next day. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once, comparing notes on fines they'd paid that weren't reflected in the official records. Karen banged her gavel repeatedly. This meeting is adjourned, she shouted over the chaos. As people filed out, buzzing with conversation, Karen cornered Dad in the hallway. I stayed close enough to hear. I don't know what game you're playing, Reynolds, she hissed, but you're making a powerful enemy. Dad looked her straight in the eyes. I'm not playing games, Karen. I'm simply ensuring that our community follows its own rules. All of them. Walking home under the streetlights, our neighbors joined us like a parade. What happens next? Mrs. Wilson asked. Dad looked thoughtful. The bank's audit results should come back within 2 weeks. If there are discrepancies. He didn't need to finish the sentence. We all understood what it meant. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard a car door slam and peeked through my blinds. A figure was moving around our front yard with a flashlight. Suddenly, our motion sensor lights flipped on, illuminating Karen with something in her hands. She jumped, startled by the light, then hurried back to her car and drove away. The next morning, we discovered all our garden plants had been uprooted and scattered across the lawn. Pinned to our door was another citation. Landscaping debris. Fine, $200. But Karen had made a critical mistake. Our doorbell camera had captured everything. Dad slammed his briefcase onto our kitchen table. His face flushed with anger I rarely saw. Do you know what landed on my desk today? He asked, pulling out a thick folder with the Pinecrest Gardens HOA logo. My jaw dropped. No way. He nodded, spreading papers across our table. The HOA needs $1.2 million to renovate their precious community center. And guess who they came to for the loan? First National Bank. I whispered, suddenly understanding. And guess who's the senior loan officer assigned to review their application? Dad's eyes sparkled with something between amusement and revenge. I couldn't believe our luck. The very same day Karen had ticketed our cars, she had submitted loan paperwork to my father's bank. Life had a funny way of connecting dots sometimes. This doesn't mean we can just deny them, Dad warned, always the professional. But it does mean I can look very, very carefully at their finances. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. I opened it to find another yellow citation slip. Violation. Unapproved garden plants. Fine, $200. Are you kidding me? I held up the paper to Dad. These plants have been here for 5 years. Dad took the citation, his banker's eyes scanning every detail. This is dated today, just hours after our phone call with Karen. That can't be a coincidence, I said. No, it's not, Dad agreed quietly. This is personal now. That night I couldn't sleep. From my bedroom window, I watched Karen's house across the street. Her lights stayed on late too, and I wondered if she knew what storm was brewing. The next morning, the mailman delivered a certified letter from the HOA. Another fine, this time for our garbage cans being visible from the street. $250? I exclaimed, showing Dad over breakfast. They weren't even out. Dad didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pulled out his laptop and typed furiously. What are you doing? I asked, peering over his shoulder. Research, he replied. Every loan application requires due diligence. I'm just being thorough. By lunchtime, Dad had uncovered something interesting. The HOA has applied for 3 loans in the past 2 years, all from different banks. 2 were denied. Why? I asked. That's what I need to find out. Dad made several calls that afternoon, speaking in his official banker voice. I heard phrases like, cross-reference these figures, and audit history, that made little sense to me but sounded important. When Mom got home from work, we brought her up to speed. As a real estate lawyer, she had her own insights. HOAs have to keep detailed financial records, she explained, and members have the right to see them. Even if the president hates us? I asked. Especially then, Mom smiled. Let's request everything. The 3 of us crafted a formal letter requesting all HOA financial records for the past 5 years. Dad delivered it personally to Karen's doorstep the next evening. I watched from our living room as Karen opened her door. Even from across the street, I could see her face change from fake politeness to shock as she realized who stood there. Dad returned looking satisfied. She tried to refuse it. I reminded her that refusing a formal request violates HOA bylaws. What did she say? I asked eagerly. She said she'd have the documents ready in 30 days, which is the maximum time allowed. That gives her time to fix any problems, Mom pointed out. Not if the bank needs those same documents within 10 business days for loan approval, Dad countered with a wink. The following week was tense. More citations appeared for a tree branch hanging too low, for a hose left uncoiled, for mail not collected promptly. Each one seemed more ridiculous than the last. Meanwhile, I noticed increased activity at the HOA office. Through my friend Jake, whose mom was the HOA secretary, I learned they were working overtime organizing files. They're freaking out, Jake told me during lunch break. Karen keeps saying everything has to be perfect for some bank review. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at Dad's office containing the HOA's financial records. That evening, our dining table disappeared under mountains of paper as Mom and Dad pored over everything. Look at this, Mom said around midnight, pointing to a series of entries. They've been charging homeowners for services never provided. And here, Dad added, expense reports with no receipts. By morning, they had compiled a list of 27 financial discrepancies. Dad took the list to work where he could compare it against the loan application materials. When he came home that evening, his expression told me everything. It's worse than we thought, he said, voice low. They've been claiming higher income on loan applications than what appears in their actual records. Is that illegal? I asked. It's fraud, Mom answered gravely. The next day, Karen cornered me at the neighborhood mailboxes. "Your father needs to approve our loan," she hissed, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing the air near my face. "The community center renovation is important to everyone." I stepped back. "Dad has to follow banking regulations. I'm sure if everything's in order, there won't be a problem." Her eyes narrowed. "Tell him I'd hate to see your family struggle with all these violation fees adding up. Maybe if the loan process goes smoothly, we could reconsider some of those citations." My heart pounded as I realized what was happening. "Are you trying to bribe us?" Karen's face flushed. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm just saying one good turn deserves another." I walked away, hands shaking. When I told Dad what happened, he became very quiet. "She just made a critical mistake," he finally said, picking up his phone. Dad spent the next hour on a call with his bank's legal department. When he hung up, he looked both worried and determined. "This isn't just about parking anymore," he explained. "This is about potential fraud and attempted coercion. The bank is launching a formal investigation before making any loan decision." That night, I saw Karen and 3 other HOA board members meeting at her house until late. Through social media, news spread quickly that something big was happening with the HOA loan. The next morning, a formal letter arrived from First National Bank requesting additional documentation and an in-person meeting with the entire HOA board. As I watched Karen receive her copy from the mailman, I wondered if she realized yet how badly she had underestimated my father. What none of us expected was how quickly things would unravel, or the shocking secrets we'd uncover in the process. Whispers spread through Pinecrest Gardens faster than wildfire. Neighbors knocked on our door asking if the rumors were true. Was the HOA in financial trouble? Was the community center renovation canceled? Was Karen really being investigated? I answered truthfully, "Dad can't discuss the details, but First National Bank is conducting a thorough review." 3 days before the monthly HOA meeting, a moving truck appeared at Treasurer Bob Wilson's house. By nightfall, his family was gone without saying goodbye to anyone. Neighbors buzzed with theories, but I had my suspicions. The meeting room at the community center burst with residents. I'd never seen such a crowd. People stood along walls, sat on floors, and peered through doorways. Karen's usual composure seemed cracked as she shuffled papers at the front table. "I call this meeting to order," she announced, her voice wavering slightly. "First, I'd like to address some rumors circulating about our loan application." Dad sat quietly near the back, his banker's notepad in hand. Mom, in her lawyer mode, recorded everything on her phone. "The renovation project is absolutely moving forward," Karen continued with false brightness. "There have been some standard questions from the bank, which is perfectly normal for a loan of this size." Mr. Peterson, who lived next door to us, raised his hand. "Is it true Bob Wilson moved away suddenly because of financial improprieties?" Karen's smile tightened. "Bob relocated for personal reasons unrelated to the HOA. Now, moving on to, what about the 3 previous loan applications that were rejected?" called Mrs. Gomez from the back row. The room grew tense. Karen's eyes darted around, finally landing on my father. "I don't know who's spreading these lies, but they're unfounded." Dad stood slowly. The room hushed as he stepped forward. "My name is Thomas Reynolds," he began calmly. "As many of you know, I work at First National Bank as a senior loan officer. In the interest of transparency, I should disclose that I'm currently reviewing the HOA's application." Karen cut in. "Mr. Reynolds should recuse himself from this discussion due to obvious conflicts of interest, given the numerous violations his family has incurred." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The violations began after the loan application was submitted," Dad clarified, "and they accelerated after I was assigned to review it." He opened his folder and continued, "While I can't share confidential bank information, as a homeowner and HOA member, I do have the right to discuss HOA finances based on the records provided through our formal request." He clicked a remote and the projector displayed a spreadsheet. "This is the financial summary provided to all homeowners in January. Please note the income from annual dues." He clicked again. "And this is the figure reported on the loan application submitted in February." There's a discrepancy of nearly $80,000. The room erupted. Karen banged her gavel repeatedly. Furthermore, Dad continued once the noise subsided, the HOA's records show that certain board members have been reimbursed for expenses without proper documentation. He clicked through several more slides showing unusual payments, missing records, and inconsistent enforcement of fines. With each revelation, Karen's face grew paler. Most concerning, Dad concluded, is this pattern of selective enforcement. The screen showed a graph of violation notices by neighborhood section. The streets where Karen's friends lived had virtually no citations, while our street had received over 60% of all fines. Karen sprang to her feet. This is a witch hunt. Mr. Reynolds is manipulating data because his family can't follow simple rules. Dad remained unruffled. All of these findings have been shared with the bank's audit department and with state regulatory authorities. The meeting dissolved into chaos. People shouted questions, demanded resignations, and argued among themselves. Through the commotion, I watched as Diane slipped Karen a note. After reading it, Karen's eyes widened in panic. The vice president finally restored order and called for an emergency board meeting to address the concerns. As people began filing out, reporters from the local newspaper approached Dad. Word had somehow leaked to the press. In the parking lot, Karen charged toward us, Diane trailing behind her. "You've ruined everything," she seethed, makeup smeared from what looked like tears. "You have no idea what you've done." Dad faced her squarely. "I'm simply doing my job, both as a banker and as a responsible homeowner. This community center was going to be my legacy," Karen said, her voice breaking, "named after my late husband." For a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. "I've worked for years on this," she continued. "Sometimes I had to bend rules to make things happen. You don't understand what it takes to keep property values high in a neighborhood like this." "Bending rules isn't the same as financial misconduct," Mom interjected quietly. Karen's momentary vulnerability vanished. "Fine. If that's how you want to play, remember I'm still president. I can make your lives incredibly difficult." "Actually," came a voice from behind us, "the bylaws allow for removal of board members under investigation." We turned to see Mr. Gonzalez, a retired judge who lived at the end of our street. "I've heard enough tonight to call for an emergency vote." Karen's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this. All of you." As she stormed away, Dad received a call from his bank. Stepping aside to take it, his expression grew increasingly concerned. "What is it?" I asked when he returned. "The rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought," he replied grimly. "The audit team found evidence that this isn't just about our HOA. Karen and several board members appear to be involved with multiple homeowners associations across the county." "What does that mean?" Mom asked. "It means this might be a systematic fraud operation," Dad explained. "Using HOA funds, inflating loan applications, and possibly kickbacks from contractors." That night, strange cars drove slowly past our house. Our trash cans were knocked over, and someone rang our doorbell at 3 a.m., then ran away. "They're trying to intimidate us," Mom observed as we cleaned up the scattered garbage the next morning. Dad nodded. "Which means we're onto something significant." By afternoon, news vans parked along our street. A reporter approached as I walked home from the bus stop. "Is it true your father uncovered a multi-million-dollar HOA fraud scheme?" she asked, thrusting a microphone toward me. I froze, unsure what to say. Before I could answer, Dad appeared at my side. "No comment at this time," he said firmly, guiding me away. "But we will have a statement soon." Inside, we found Mom on the phone with her law firm colleagues. "Yes, I think we need to bring in the district attorney's office," she was saying. The situation had grown far beyond parking violations. What started as petty neighborhood politics had revealed something much darker. As Dad's phone rang with calls from bank executives and Mom consulted with legal experts, I wondered how our ordinary family had stumbled into the center of what now appeared to be a criminal investigation. What none of us realized yet was that Karen had one final, desperate move to play, and she was willing to risk everything to silence us. Cameras flashed as I opened my front door. 3 local news vans parked along our street. Reporters huddled on the sidewalk with microphones ready. "Is it true the HOA president vandalized your property?" one shouted. I froze, completely unprepared for this media frenzy. Dad pulled me back inside. "Mrs. Garcia across the street sent her security footage to Channel 5, he explained. "Karen and Diane were caught red-handed digging up our garden at 2 a.m. My phone buzzed with notifications. The Pinecrest Gardens community page exploded with activity. 126 new posts since morning. Neighbors I'd never spoken to were sharing stories of Karen's tyranny. Forced paint changes, arbitrary tree removals, and surprise fines for invisible violations. They're organizing a meeting at the Jacksons' house tonight," I told Dad, scrolling through comments. "Everyone wants to see the financial documents you found." He nodded, looking both worried and determined. "I need to be careful. Sharing certain bank information could cost me my job." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Officer Martinez, holding a thin stack of papers. "We're filing charges for criminal mischief and trespassing," she explained. "But I should warn you, Ms. Matthews is filing a harassment claim against your family." My stomach dropped. "Harassment? We haven't done anything." "She claims your father is abusing his position at the bank to conduct a personal vendetta," Officer Martinez said. "She's demanding the bank assign someone else to the HOA loan application." Dad laughed without humor. "The audit was triggered automatically by discrepancies in their financial statements. Any banker would have flagged the same issues. We barely had time to process this when my sister burst through the door. Have you seen this?" She thrust her phone at us, displaying an email sent to every homeowner in Pinecrest Gardens. Karen had called an emergency HOA meeting for tomorrow night to discuss criminal activities and financial sabotage by the Reynolds family. At the Jacksons' house that evening, their living room overflowed with angry neighbors. People sat on floors, leaned against walls, and crowded the adjacent kitchen. Mr. Jackson handed out printed copies of HOA financial statements with questionable expenses highlighted. Karen charged the HOA for 6 business dinners at Rosario's Steakhouse last month, Mrs. Smith announced, glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the papers. Who was she meeting? And why does a neighborhood association need $2,400 worth of business dinners? The revelations kept coming. Landscaping services billed to Karen's brother-in-law at premium rates. Community event funds spent at spas and boutiques. A consulting fee paid monthly to Diane with no deliverable specified. I've drafted a petition for immediate removal of the board, Mr. Jackson said, holding up a document. We've confirmed with a lawyer that with signatures from 70% of homeowners, we can force an emergency election. The doorbell interrupted him. We all froze, then relaxed when Mrs. Jackson returned with Mr. Lopez, the retired judge from the end of our street. I've reviewed everything, he announced. This isn't just HOA mismanagement. This is embezzlement. A collective gasp filled the room. Embezzlement meant criminal charges. It meant possible jail time. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Back off or your father's banking career is over. I know people. I silently passed the phone to Dad, whose face darkened. Karen's threatening us, he told the room. The revelation sparked outrage among our neighbors. I've had enough, Ms. Wong announced, standing up. I'm an accountant. I'll help organize these records for the district attorney. As we strategized late into the night, volunteers signed up for various tasks. Gathering signatures, creating evidence packages, and preparing for tomorrow's confrontation. The atmosphere buzzed with a strange mix of anger and excitement. People who had lived next to each other for years were finally uniting for something important. Walking home under streetlights, Dad put his arm around my shoulders. I'm proud of how you're handling this, he said. Standing up to bullies is never easy. What if Karen really does try to hurt your job? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Before he could answer, headlights swept across us. Karen's luxury SUV crawled slowly past our house, then accelerated away. The message was clear. She was watching us. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Sometimes doing the right thing comes with risks, he said quietly. But letting people like Karen intimidate an entire neighborhood? That's a bigger risk to our community. That night I couldn't sleep. The petition already had 63 signatures, just a few shy of what we needed. Tomorrow's emergency HOA meeting loomed like a final battle. I checked our garden through my bedroom window, half expecting to see shadowy figures, but our yard remained peaceful under the moonlight. Then my laptop chimed with an incoming email. The sender's name made my heart skip. Diana Matthews, Karen's daughter. The subject line read simply, "The safe behind my mother's desk." Delete that email immediately. Dad's voice shook with urgency as he looked over my shoulder at Diana's message. This could be a trap to claim we broke into Karen's office. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped me. What if Diana really wants to help? She might be tired of her mom's behavior too. The community center buzzed with tension as neighbors filed in for the emergency meeting. Karen stood at the podium, hair perfectly styled despite the stress lines around her eyes. 5 other board members sat behind her, all avoiding eye contact with the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," Karen began, her voice falsely cheerful. "I've called this meeting to address malicious rumors being spread about our HOA leadership." A projector flashed financial statements on the wall behind her, neat, organized, and completely different from what Dad had uncovered. "As you can see, our finances are transparent and properly managed," she continued. "The accusations being made are baseless and personally motivated." My heart sank. She had created fake documents. How could we prove otherwise? Dad raised his hand. Karen pretended not to see him, but Mr. Lopez stood up. "Point of order," the retired judge announced. "Members have the right to speak at emergency meetings." Karen's smile tightened. "Of course. Mr. Reynolds, you have 2 minutes." Dad walked to the center of the room rather than the podium. "These financial statements differ completely from the ones I reviewed at the bank," he said calmly. "I believe Ms. Matthews has presented altered documents." Karen laughed. "Serious accusations require serious evidence. Do you have proof these aren't the real statements?" The room grew uncomfortably quiet. We had copies of what Dad had seen, but how could we prove which version was authentic? My phone vibrated. Another email from Diana. "Safe combination. 24-18-32. Records inside. Hurry." I showed Dad, who whispered to Mr. Jackson. Within minutes, Mr. Jackson had slipped out while Dad kept everyone's attention by questioning specific line items. "This landscaping charge for $8,700, Dad pointed out. "The company listed doesn't exist in state records." Karen's face flushed. "That's absurd. Martinez Landscaping is a legitimate business. Owned by your brother-in-law," Mrs. Smith called out. "Who doesn't have a landscaping license?" The meeting descended into shouting. Karen banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to regain control, when suddenly the doors burst open. Mr. Jackson hurried in, clutching a weathered green ledger book. "Found in the HOA office safe," he announced, holding it up. "The real financial records." Karen lunged toward him. "That's private property. You broke into my office." Diana stepped through the door behind Mr. Jackson. "I gave them access," she said quietly. "I'm tired of the lies, Mom." The room fell silent. Karen stared at her daughter in disbelief. "Diana, what have you done?" "The right thing," Diana replied. "Something you taught me before you became this person." Mr. Lopez examined the ledger, flipping through pages of handwritten entries. "This shows systematic misappropriation of funds," he announced, "and matches the bank records exactly." Karen's face crumpled as Diana walked to her side. "I'm sorry," Diana said, not unkindly, "but this needs to stop." In that moment, Karen seemed to shrink, her shoulders slumping as she looked around the room at her neighbors' faces. For the first time, I saw her not as a villain but as someone who had lost her way. Mr. Lopez raised his voice. "According to our bylaws, we can proceed with an immediate vote of no confidence." The vote wasn't even close, 92% in favor of removing the entire board. Karen and her allies walked out without a word, leaving Diana behind. "I know what she did was wrong," Diana told us after they left. "I tried talking to her for months, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying it was for the good of the neighborhood." The following week brought dramatic changes. An interim board was elected with Mr. Jackson as president. The district attorney opened an investigation into the financial irregularities. Dad was removed from the HOA loan review at his own request to avoid any conflict of interest. One evening as I worked on homework, our doorbell rang. Karen stood on our porch, looking smaller somehow in casual clothes rather than her usual business attire. "Is your father home?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. Dad invited her in, and I watched from the stairs as they sat at our kitchen table. "I've paid back the misappropriated funds," she said, "and I'm selling my house. Before I go, I wanted to apologize." Dad nodded but said nothing. "What you did," Karen continued, exposing the financial issues. "You could have done worse. You could have pressed charges immediately." "That wasn't my goal," Dad replied. "I just wanted fair treatment for everyone in Pinecrest Gardens." After she left, Dad explained that Karen had agreed to a settlement with the HOA, full financial restitution plus penalties, in exchange for the association not pursuing criminal charges. 6 weeks later, moving trucks appeared outside Karen's house. Diana stopped by our house that afternoon. "Mom's going to live with my aunt in Arizona," she explained. "I think it'll be good for her. A fresh start." "What about you?" I asked. "I'm staying. This is my home too." She smiled cautiously. "Maybe we could be friends now?" Spring arrived with new energy in our neighborhood. The revised HOA bylaws passed with overwhelming support, clearer, fairer rules with proper checks and balances. Mr. Jackson organized the first-ever Pinecrest Gardens block party, complete with a permit for street parking. As neighbors gathered in our cul-de-sac with food and music, kids riding bikes freely between houses, I realized something important had happened. A community that once lived in fear of arbitrary rules now buzzed with genuine connection. Dad found me sitting on our front steps, watching everyone. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked. I nodded. "It's weird how something bad can lead to something good. If they hadn't fined us for parking in our own driveway," he laughed. "Sometimes you need to stand up to unfairness, not just for yourself but for everyone affected by it." As the evening wound down, our driveway filled with neighbors' cars while people helped clean up. Not a single fine was issued. Not a single nasty note appeared on windshields. Instead, people simply helped each other, talked, and laughed under the stars. Diana joined us as we locked up. "My mom called today," she said. "She's doing better. I think seeing consequences for her actions was necessary." I nodded, understanding that healing comes in many forms. "You know what's funny?" Diana added. "This all started with parking disputes, and now look, cars everywhere and everybody's happy." Sometimes the smallest injustices reveal the biggest problems. And sometimes standing up to those problems doesn't just solve one issue, it transforms an entire community. As I looked at our driveway full of cars that night, I realized that the most valuable things in a neighborhood aren't property values or perfect lawns. They're the relationships between the people who call it home.